everyone, I'm Andrew Timbrell and you're listening to HTO Football, and I'm back in the changing room. But this week I'm joined by not Tom Whitford, but actually another football expert, Dutch football expert Cecilia Lagos. Cecilia, how are you? Are you well?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, well and healthy so far. I hope it's the same with you.
Yes, definitely considering. So we've got you in today for a short episode to give your assessment on our Dutch Premier League 11. It was a tricky one because going through the list of players over the years, there's Dutch football, right, has this sort of connotation, doesn't it, of very attacking football without the handbrake on. Is that an observation you agree with since being a fan of Dutch football?
Yeah, I think that's a first statement, and also, yeah, I mean, it's always thinking about attacking, but also recovering the ball very, very fast. You know, ever since the Dutch team from the 70s, everything changed, not only here but in the rest of the world. So it's amazing how this such tiny little country has such an influence in the history of football. So I can definitely agree. Beyond the fact that sometimes during the history from the 70s on of the Dutch team, and I mean the national team, if you're talking about that, but in some clubs, of course, they are not totally attacking. But if you think immediately about Dutch football, it's of course an extremely technical quality, passing, always trying to attack. Yeah, definitely. That's maybe the stereotype. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think before we go straight in with the goalkeeper, when we were looking at our sort of short list of plays in every area, it became apparent that in central midfield it was almost we were trying to allocate all these attacking players that we've seen in the Premier League over the years. Yeah, the midfield isn't particularly defensive. Before we start, we've done our best to put two solid central midfielders in there that I think will do a good job. But yeah, I think when we were talking a minute ago about the history of the Premier League and how Dutch football was influenced as the football in this country, there's a player up front that we'll talk about later, who I feel was probably the catalyst for that, who was who transformed Arsenal Football Club as well at the same time. But let's not rush ahead. So we'll go with the goalkeeper. It's a clear option for us at HTO Football.
Van der Sar.
Of course, it has to be Van der Sar. I mean, I don't want to keep talking about Champions League too much in this podcast because obviously it's a Premier League focused one. But I mean, 4 Premier League titles with Manchester United. He'd had a great career at Fulham prior to that, and a decade in England really that was littered with just excellent performances and clean sheets. I think still holding the record, I believe, for 14 consecutive clean sheets in the Premier League, which is just astounding. I know he had quite a good defence in front of him, but I mean, there was some other options that were like notable absentees. Someone like Ed de Hoy, who was at Chelsea for a few years, but no competition really, is there?
No, not at all. I mean, ever since you told me this is the best Premier League Dutch 11 in history, definitely the first option. I'm sorry, I think my husband is trying to clean the dishes. We just had dinner. Yeah, ever since you told me this is the best 11 ever, immediately it's a no-brainer. There's no other option. It has to be Edwin van der Sar because of all the things you already listed, and also because he's my idol.
Yeah.
One of my idols, definitely. So yeah, he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, it was probably the only area in the pitch where it was like there was no other option. I mean, there are areas in the pitch, particularly at the back and up front, where there was a number of quality players that we had to choose from, but that was almost like a no-brainer. It took 3 or 4 seconds to even put it down, really. Interestingly, so this is where the very attacking influence came into our choices, because we've also gone for 3 at the back and not many defensive players in midfield either. So we've taken on a very Dutch managerial role as well.
Okay.
So the back 3. Well, firstly, the first one down has to be for us Virgil van Dyke. I mean, the influence that he's had at Liverpool, joining from Southampton sort of 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, he's completely transformed that defence. That ironically let in 7 the other day against Aston Villa, but we'll forget about that. Yeah, obviously a Premier League title to his name and a Champions League. Player of the Year with the PFA in 18-19 as well. Just an absolute giant back there in the Liverpool defence. How is he seen? What's the perception of Van Dijk in Holland, Cecilia?
He's the pride of the country, absolutely. I mean, he's master and commander not only of Liverpool's defense, but also the Dutch national team. He's so reliable, and not only because, as I said, like he owns the defense, but also because he scores. You know, he's also an offensive weapon. So, and he's just as is Matthijs de Ligt, of course, not in the Premier League in this case, but. He's just absolutely regarded as one of the players that make us proud. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't think of many players in Premier League history that have signed for a club and had that level of impact. I mean, N'Golo Conte left Leicester to go to Chelsea and won the league with Chelsea, but that wasn't really such a transformational transfer, was it? I mean, Van Dijk has made that back for the defence it is, almost single-handedly at times.
Absolutely, and he's also a leader. So he's not only doing his job, but he also guides everyone else, and he also encourages everyone else. So he's definitely a leader, and he imbues the team with that energy. So, I mean, everyone in Liverpool really is doing so well, but definitely right. Van Dijk is such an important piece also from the energy side in that sense, in his authority on the field.
I was going to say that's a good point about the leadership, because I feel like if he wasn't in that defence, perhaps Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, that people wax lyrical about those fullbacks, but without Van Dijk in the middle there, you wonder would they be so attacking and bombing on as much with knowing that they're without that security behind them.
Yeah, exactly. Because Van Dijk is older too. Especially if I have to think about Alexander-Arnold, he's also very young still. So they have this figure who transfer them and make them feel secure, safe. I think that's it's a guarantee of safety. So if you have that safety guarantee, definitely you can feel a lot relaxed to do your own game and to play your own game. So that's definitely an advantage.
And I suppose the Liverpool fans making them a bit more relaxed as well, because over the years they haven't been as tight as they are now. Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, so next, alongside Virgil in this back three, we've gone for another, obviously, Dutch legend, Jaap Stam, who, interestingly, I didn't really realise this at the time. So I was looking at my research and my notes the other day that he won the Premier League title every season that he was in England with Manchester United, which was quite interesting. Arriving that 98-99, we know how that season ended for Manchester United, and then to win another 2 Premier League titles on the back of that. He's had his sort of mishaps in the news, but similar to Virgil van Dijk, just an absolute beast.
Yeah, that's a very good word to describe him, because I think that maybe Van Dijk, he has this, I wouldn't say, it's a sort of maybe more positive aggression, if you will.
Yeah.
But Stam was a beast, as you said. It's like no ball and no player. It's like maybe Van Dijk is a bit more elegant, if you will. So I think you described him very well. Yeah,
they complement each other well in the back there. And then alongside both of these, we've gone for Mario Melchio, who spent sort of 4 or 5 years at Chelsea, playing on the right-hand side of that defence. But you always felt with Mario that he could implement himself as a centre-back with his height, good pace about him, good in the air. So we felt like that would fit well as a 3, playing nearly 300 appearances in the Premier League for Chelsea. I think he was at Wigan for a while, Birmingham. Had a few games for Holland, right?
I don't have the stats right now, but I guess so. It was a time that I was telling you before we started that I come from Chile and we didn't have access during the 90s, or even during the first part of the 2000s, we didn't have access to international football that much as we had for the last 10 years. So
Yeah,
sadly for me, I missed a lot of those good moments.
they've had some great right backs over the years in Holland, haven't they? That haven't come over
Yeah.
here. People like Reiziger had a spell at Middlesbrough, I believe. But I don't think long enough really to sort of merit being in the team. So we went for Melchio, so a good 5 years at Chelsea, and yeah, nearly 300 appearances in the Premier League. So we felt that was, because it's hard when you pick these teams, because you sometimes lean towards the sort of better name instead of the career that they had in the country. So we'll talk about someone in a minute, someone like Edgar Davids, who was at Spurs, but we felt that he wasn't really there long enough and didn't have the impact on the league as other players have had. So, but then moving on to midfield, we've gone, obviously there's a 4 in midfield. We could have picked 5 or 6 strikers, but that wouldn't work if we were putting this team out on a football pitch.
No, that would be like the football of 1800s or so.
yeah. Well, boy, the Dutch philosophy, really, ironically.
Yeah.
So in central midfield, then, to accommodate all of these attacking players, we went for 2 players who, in different ways, have had an imprint on the league, but perhaps for similar spells, really. One of them is Bolo Zenden, who obviously had a good career at Chelsea, went to Middlesbrough, and he spent nearly a decade in the Premier League for 4 different clubs, nearly around about 200 appearances, 190 appearances or something like that, and a very cultured left foot. I know he's played a few games for Holland, but they've had some great central midfielders over the years, haven't they? I mean, when we were looking at the central midfield area, Edgar Davids came up in discussion. Of course. But we just felt that his impact was more in Serie A and with La Liga maybe as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. But he was nicknamed the people, so that says it all. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes I guess Serie A is more his type of football, definitely.
Yeah, we're talking about Yap Sam and aggression. That maybe there would have been too much aggression if we'd have put Davids in there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then alongside Bolo Zenden, we've gone for Gini Wijnaldum, who's obviously at Liverpool at the moment. So I feel such an underrated footballer for me. Do you agree?
I think he's very humble, and he does. How can I say it? It's not that he does a silent job, because you can actually see what he does, but then there's always someone else who stands out better. So even if he scores, sometimes his name or his performance is always in the second or third level, and it doesn't come up immediately top of the mind.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, but on the other hand, he's totally an absolute starter in the Dutch national team. He, under Koeman, scored a lot. He was a scoring weapon all the time. And I think, he should definitely get more recognition. But at least you're choosing him right now. So that's very good. I would choose him too, because he's absolutely reliable. Yeah,
and I think, like we mentioned earlier, that some of the great Dutch central midfield players over the years haven't come over to the Premier League. I mean, people like Cocu, who's obviously managing now at Derby, and Mark van Bommel, who had a great spell with PSV and obviously Barcelona. Actually, he would have fit in well in the Premier League. I always felt Van Bommel would have been a perfect league for him. But yeah, we just felt that Zenden and Wijnaldum would have given that solidity in there. And interestingly, with Wijnaldum, when he was at Newcastle, he seemed to be a player that did like to get forward and was that kind of arriving late in the box. He's done that on occasion at Liverpool, but he's kind of almost moulded into this central midfield player that sort of can do everything.
Yeah, I think so, because as I said, during the spell of Koeman in the Dutch national team, he scored several times, and he was a very important piece in that sense, especially taken into account that the Dutch team under Koeman came from behind in the results a lot of times, maybe most of the games. They were always 1-0, 2-0, and then they needed to equalize and they needed to win and turn it around. And definitely Wijnaldum helped in that, and he scored in order to make this comeback. So he was a regular on the score sheet under Koeman. Yeah.
I think with that Liverpool 3 as well, with Wijnaldum, you've got Henderson in there, Fabinho. They're the sort of players that if you took one of them out, you'd realise how important they are. And they work so well as a 3. And I think, just quite an underrated footballer, Wijnaldum. But he makes our team, so he's not as underrated as what some people might suggest. But and then on the wings, we've gone for a 4 in midfield. So 2 wingers who are just incredibly exciting, full of pace, skill, dribbling, but didn't really spend a great deal of time in the Premier League. But the impact that they had when they were here was just phenomenal. I mean, one of my favourite I'm an Arsenal fan. One of my favourite players growing up was Mark Overmars, who makes our team on the left wing, cutting in with his right foot. I mean, he was a huge part of that double winning side in 97, 98. And interestingly, like, although I say only 100 Premier League appearances, but it's not bad going. And in 52 of those games, he either scored or assisted, which is quite impressive.
He's so fast, and definitely a lethal weapon, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and he also has his legend here, and now he's working at Ajax alongside Edwin van der Sar. So he's the sports director of Ajax, and he has this football mentality, and what he learned and what he did on the pitch, he's bringing it out of the pitch too. So, but beyond that, of course, he was such an important piece also for the Dutch team. So I definitely agree with you. I mean, Mark Overmars is one of the legends of the last 20, 30 years in Dutch football.
It's interesting as well because you've got a lot of Arsenal fans at the moment, I think, that are sort of wanting him to return as a technical director of some sort, and then you've also got some Manchester United fans that would probably want Edwin van der Sar to be doing the same thing at Old Trafford.
Absolutely. I am a Manchester United fan. That's why he's my idol, and definitely I would love to have someone like him instead of Edwin.
Yeah. On the other wing, a very similar player in terms of pace and skill, but with a left foot instead, is Arjen Robben. I mean, Robben was one of the first names on our team sheet. Actually, the impact that he had at Chelsea was incredible. Really, he signed to the season, I think, in the summer of 2004. And he becomes an integral part of that Mourinho side that wins back-to-back Premier League trophies. That was quite a defensive Chelsea side, but because they had Robben, Duff, and Didier Drogba up front, those 3 could just propel Chelsea to silverware. And Robben was electrifying, and obviously went on to have an incredible career and still playing, right? In Groningen.
Yeah, definitely. He's now in Groningen, which is the first team, where he started. But he came back from retirement into that. But that Robben you mentioned at Chelsea, he was in a very good physical shape. And that's the thing that really he lacked, the physical fitness in the last probably 5 years of his career. He was half the season injured and the other half maybe not playing 90 minutes. Although he was still very dangerous. But at that time, where you mentioned it, when he was 100% physically fit, of course, there's no way to stop him and there's no way to consider him out of the team. I mean, he's absolutely explosive.
And one thing that you couldn't stop was that movement when he cuts in on his left foot and bends it into the far corner. You see it happening, but no one can do anything about it.
That's his signature move. It's like, we call it to hook in Spanish. It's like to hook to the inside and then just shoot.
Yeah.
But it's just, when he was totally fit. Now he's already injured. He's been playing only 20 minutes here, half an hour here. They cannot really make him play. But immediately makes a difference here, of course, at this level. So, imagine him. I couldn't really see him at at his peak, in Chelsea and Bayern Munich. But yeah, I mean, the last part that I could see, that we all could see, it was really extraordinary until probably 5 years ago, when then couldn't be fit all the time.
Yeah, I think you could argue. I think the better years of his career were spent at Bayern Munich, really. But we felt that the time spent at Chelsea was just so explosive and impressive. I mean, that was the Mourinho side that obviously they'd had a lot of money spent on them with Roman Abramovich there when Ranieri was in charge, but Robben and Drogba were just huge signings for Mourinho. Obviously Claude Makelele as well, but we're going to other countries now. We will stick on the Dutch route, but yeah, that midfield was interesting, because now we move on to the front three, which picks itself for us. There's no real debate here. I mean, thing is, we'll talk about some names in a minute who don't make the team, and I'm sure you might have a couple of options who we haven't mentioned. But up front, we've gone for a number 10 playing behind two strikers. So it's kind of like a 3-4-1-2. And as a number 10, well, I mean, who else are we going to go for? It's got to be Dennis the Menace, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's funny because I couldn't get to see him play in Arsenal, but of course, whenever I could see and watch YouTube videos of him, especially my husband is Dutch, and he's never been an Arsenal fan, but he always admired Dennis Bergkamp. So he always showed me these YouTube videos, and I saw them also before, and it's just, I had never seen anything like that, not before, not after. He's just one of a kind. He was a wizard. I mean, it's just crazy. The skill, what he was able to do is just, I mean, mind-blowing. I wish there were more players like him, but maybe that wouldn't make him so special anyway. But it's been too long since such kind of talent. So yeah, he's so missed. He's so missed, not only by Arsenal fans, but by any football fan, definitely.
And what we were saying earlier as well, Cecilia, about the whole thing of Dutch influence on the Premier League. I mean, for me, he was the catalyst for that. Just coming over from Inter Milan and joining an Arsenal side that were obviously going through changes as well culturally. But Dennis Bergkamp was at the front of that, really, and kind of brought over that. I mean, Arsene Wenger had an impact in terms of the managerial side of things, but I think on the pitch, Dennis Bergkamp changed Premier League football. Three Premier League titles. I mean, you could argue, if we were to do a podcast as the best Premier League goal of all time, then Dennis Bergkamp has a list of options that could be in there, and arguably he wins it with that goal against Newcastle.
I was going to tell you, there was it Newcastle? I wasn't sure. Yeah, definitely Newcastle. Yeah, I mean, who else is that? Really, it's crazy. It's insane. The best kind of insane, of course. But yeah, it's just every time I watch him, it blows my mind in the best way.
And I think as well with a lot of these players in this side today, where obviously Dutch football is renowned for having bundles of skill in their team and in their academies growing up, but with Bergkamp, there was this natural instinct to play with joy, and he reminded me of like a Dutch Zidane. Like he had a sometimes a bit of a nasty side to him, Dennis, I think, and everyone knew that. But that made him the player he was. But there was just this, and Ronaldinho, similar in terms of with Brazil, that a footballer that doesn't rely on pace, strength. The people that we've mentioned earlier, people like Robben and Overmars, where great they are, you can tell that's been sort of that's had to be trained and coached. Whereas with Dennis Bergkamp, it's he was just born to play football, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think when you think of Dennis Bergkamp, it's about magic. That's the word that comes to my mind when I think of him. It's magic. I mean, who else does that? Really, not even Messi. It's crazy. And the amount of skill to control the ball in order to do all the tricks he did, surrounded by defenders and in front of a goalkeeper in a split second, in cold blood. It's just, I mean, you need to be a genius, and I think he was. I mean, he still is, but he's retired. But he was a genius on the pitch, definitely. I mean, I so miss that kind of player and that kind of football nowadays.
And it's interesting, this part of the pitch as well, that I'm not sure if this is maybe a debate for another day, but the whole number 10 position, I'm not sure if it's going through a little bit of a crisis, really, because there's this kind of new position as a striker that drops deep, like a Firmino type player, and Messi, obviously the false number 9 role, and then you've got wingers with pace now so like with Bayern, they're playing with people like Gnabry and Sane and Como. I just wonder, and at Liverpool with Mane and Salah, I don't know if the number 10 position is going through a bit of a reevaluation, or if it's sort of dying out. What do you think about that?
Well, coming from South America, probably it's the land of the biggest tens in history. To me, it's painful and it's full of nostalgia, because I don't think there are tens like that anymore. If you think of Pelé or Maradona or Riquelme, and also some others that didn't make it to Europe, like in my case, I saw Nestor Gorosito, who also, he was in Europe, in Spain as a coach, but we call them in Spanish, they are like conductors, because they didn't move a lot. They didn't need to have pace or speed, but their amount of skill, ambition, they could just be nailed in one position on the field, and with one pass, they would just change the whole game. I mean, it was about the richness of their technique with their feet, especially one foot. I mean, probably the right one, but it's just there's a position that it doesn't require a lot of speed and also a lot of strength, physical strength. But that's because football before was different. It didn't require the physical strength and fitness that it requires now. So I think that's part of the disappearance of this kind of players. But I miss them maybe more than anything else in football, that kind of creativity and genius and that kind of skill. You don't see it anymore.
You just wonder. You wonder if there's a place in the modern game for that luxury 10 that they've obviously. You mentioned Riquelme earlier. You've got people like Maradona, Bergkamp. Not necessarily was a luxury, but I'm thinking of someone like Mesut Ozil, who's struggling to get a game at Arsenal.
Yeah,
now. You just wonder
definitely.
if that position is in a bit of a crisis, really. I mean, so we're going to finish off with more of the Arsenal and Manchester United theme, which is going to please both of us here. We've got 2 strikers up front, and there's, again, I don't know if there's much debate here with these two. You've got Robin van Persie.
Okay.
Over a decade in the Premier League for Arsenal, and then obviously Manchester United, where he went on to win a Premier League, which is what he wanted. And then the amount of, I was looking, I think 5 times he won Goal of the Month in the Premier League, 144 goals in the Premier League in 280 appearances, won the Golden Boot twice, a phenomenal footballer who, when I was reading about Robin van Persie when he first joined Arsenal, he was one of these sort of cage footballers. He just loved to be out in the streets, trying different things, and that's how he played his game. I think when he went to Manchester United, he sort of become this more complete striker, a lot more mature. Whereas at Arsenal, there were spells where he was either sort of throwing a bit of a strop or reacting how he shouldn't, and I think Wenger gave him a lot of coaching in that regard. Because he's sort of a bit of a hothead growing up, wasn't he, Robin?
I don't really know a lot about Van Persie growing up. I'm not sure if he was like a trouble boy or whatever, or if he was a lot of time spending lots of time on the street or whatever. But of course, you can think that he was that kind of kid because of his technique and because of all the tricks that he could play on the pitch, definitely. And even until the last time until the last game, you could see him doing his magic too. I think, it's not Bergkamp, of course, but definitely there was there was this little touch of magic about him too sometimes. And I had the immense luck of seeing him the last 2 years or a year and a half of his career here at Feyenoord. And even then he wouldn't play 90 minutes, but whenever he got into the pitch, he made a difference. And sometimes also with amazing technical skill tricks, and it was amazing. I mean, the amount of goals and the unbelievable goals he scored being here in Feyenoord the last 2 years, it was really, I mean, for me, I felt so lucky to see him. So, of course, at his prime, even more. So,
you could put together a good YouTube compilation of Robin van Persie goals, right?
Absolutely. In Arsenal, in Manchester United, and also in the Dutch team. Oh, absolutely. My God, because he had it all. Also, he could be fast if he wanted, but also such an exquisite technique. He had the vision. He knew where to be always positioned in order to give or receive the ball. He knew how to skip rivals and how to play with a rival in front of him in order to just shoot or pass the ball. So no, I mean
similarities with Dennis Bergkamp in that regard. I mean, Dennis was, we're talking about conductors a minute ago, and Dennis was definitely one of those. But Robin wasn't necessarily a conductor, but he did have that very similar instinctive genius. You know, the ball would come over his shoulder, and he'd smash it into the top corner from a ridiculous angle, or the way he would pull off like a certain skill in a certain moment. There was that there, wasn't it, with Robin? So that the vision was there. It's just that maybe he was a footballer that played a bit further up the pitch than someone like a Dennis, who wanted to drop back and feed.
Yeah, exactly. Like to make others play. Going back to the 10 position thing, that's what you would like to see, like someone who masters all the court, and he makes the others play only with one long shot or one small pass, and then he unleashes mayhem, the way you want it. And maybe, of course, Bergkamp or Van Persie are not that kind of player, because basically, sometimes the 10s, the classic 10s, they would score through a free kick or something, but they wouldn't finish the play. But these are finishers of the best kind, of the best class.
Well, we're
but they could also, I mean, especially Van Persie, and in his last period with Feyenoord, he could also make others play. He assisted several goals. Yeah,
he definitely matured over the years. I mean, we're not finished with strikers just yet, because we've still got a place for another player. Interestingly, so if Bergkamp's not got his shooting boots on, then it's okay because we've got Van Persie, and if Van Persie's not scoring, then it's okay because we've got Ruud van Nistelrooy, right?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I found it hard to put him in this team because he's caused us a lot of heartache over the years, but an absolute goal machine. What a finisher! An incredible penalty taker for that as well. I mean, scored 95 Premier League goals to his name. I think he won Player of the Year in, I think it was 01-02 season actually, when Arsenal won the league that season. But obviously struggled with injury as well in his career, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and went on to have a career at Manchester United. At Real Madrid as well.
But talk about explosion.
Yeah, different to Robin and Dennis.
Yeah, definitely. But as you say, a finisher, like a killer. We call them killers. I mean, he was a killer, definitely. It's like, please start praying if you saw him coming, because it was impossible to escape his scoring. It's just it's crazy, but also with such pace, with such skill, just that he smelled blood. No, unbelievable. Those are the kind. It makes me nostalgic to talk about all these players, because I wish they could be eternal. I mean, you barely see this kind of players anymore.
Yeah, that's the aim of these changing room episodes, really.
Yeah.
It's just to sort of get everyone a trip down memory lane, and have some nostalgic chats, really. I mean, is there anyone, if you were to grade our team out of 10, Cecilia, is that a 9? Is it a 10? Is there someone missing? Is it a 4 out of 10?
No, I have to be frank, because I didn't see for so many years, especially in the beginning, for probably the first 15 years of the Premier League, I couldn't see it on TV or anything. So I will be missing something in someone. So, but what you just told me, for me, it sounds perfect. I mean, just imagine a selection like that. A national team like that or whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy.
There are some notable absentees that didn't make the 11, but they could make our bench, really. I mean, there's players like Dirk Kuyt.
Absolutely.
We've got Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, who had a great career, obviously at Chelsea and Middlesbrough, scored a lot of goals in the Premier League. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, who had a good spell at Barcelona as well. But yeah, I think we've done a good job with the team, really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Kuyt, could be a bit more defensive, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, beside the names you just told me, I don't think he's maybe a little bit under. So definitely, there's no discussion.
Yeah, great. Well, that's been fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Cecilia.
Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
See you later. Take care, yeah?
You too.
We hope you enjoyed our first episode in the changing room of 2021. Thanks again to Cecilia Lagos there for joining us. Much appreciated. We'd love to hear your feedback also on Twitter about our Dutch 11. You can find us at HTO Football, and also under the same name you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care, guys. See you next time.